Would you have sex with a cryptid? If a monster appeared, but it looked sexually attractive, would you bang it? But did you know that it's possible you've already had sex with a cryptid? In fact, you may be the child of one. And then we take a look at the story of a young girl out for a walk one day when she finds a mysterious pool of water. Little does she realize that she stands on the precipice of our world and the world beyond. If you had a chance to take a portal to an unknown dimension, would you? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for SK. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Haha, yeah, running on in, yeah, dancing. Do a little dance for us. That's a new requirement. You have to be able to dance to visit Dead Rabbit Radio Command. SK made a very generous donation during our 7th anniversary live stream special. Really, really appreciate it. That is why USK is going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or the merch store or live donations, it's totally fine. It really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Before we get started, I want to say this real quick. A couple episodes ago, I said I had to record 18 episodes in 10 days. Not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen, unfortunately. So we're gonna be trying to do something else. I mean, like, what else? You're leaving, you're gonna be gone for a month. What could you possibly do if you're not gonna do more episodes? I got some plans. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring back the Dead Rabbit Radio classics to help fill in the gap between the new episodes and the retro rabbits. A lot of you guys have been asking for the Dead Rabbit Radio Classics to come back. What basically that is, it's a director's commentary for episodes. It's past episodes of the show, but I give you some behind-the-scenes stuff or how I feel about the episode now. It's a lot of fun. I haven't done them in years. They take a lot of work. They take more work than I thought they would, but they take less work than a new episode. So I think I might try to fill the gap in with that. There will be a couple weeks of just Retro Rabbits. I know I just took a break, so that's why I feel really bad. I just took a break, but I needed to because I burned out pretty hard after 50 episodes. I needed to take that break. I knew this was coming up. I apologize for that, but I just wanted to make that announcement. SK, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you, a new car. I'm going to toss you the keys to the Carpenter Camaro. We have a brand deal. Did you know that? The 2025 Camaro is luxurious with leather seats and room to sit in, as opposed to those other cars. You can't even sit in them. You just kind of have to stand on the side and hope for the best. But the 2025 Camaro with 4-speed hydraulic engine and wheels, it has wheels unlike those other cars, and they just kind of sit there. The spacious, roomy, affordable Carpenter Camaro. Why don't you go ahead? Here's the keys. Fire this bad boy up, SK. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Why don't you drive us in luxury all the way out to the suburbs? Beautiful, luxurious, comfortable drive all the way out. Headed all the way out to the suburbs. We pull up in our roomy, fuel-efficient Chevy Camaro. Mail me my car, please, a Chevrolet. We're headed all the way out to the suburbs. We pull up in this beautiful car. And this story takes place a couple of years ago, but not too far in the past. We don't have an exact location or an exact name, but this story is going to have us ask a couple questions. You're like, is it about having sex with a cryptid? Because that's what you said in the intro. Well, maybe. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. A couple of years ago, it was around 11:30 at night, and we're about to meet a young man. Let's call him Clyde. And Clyde and a couple of his friends, he had 3 friends, they were all in their mid to late 20s, and they actually had a pretty sweet gig. They were all living together in a bachelor pad. And he goes, the way it was situated, the way our neighborhood was, you had a street, and on one side of the street was houses, and on the other side of the street was kind of a grassy area, and then there was a river. But it wasn't a river that you would want to go swimming in. In fact, a lot of people who went swimming in it got stuck because the water was more of like a muddy river and the mud was deep. And he goes, every so often, the fire department would have to come out and rescue some guy or some gal who was goofing off in there and got stuck in the mud. River, street, house. He goes, we're at the house, we're having a party. We're having a bachelor party. We got a bunch of friends over. We're kicking back, drinking, having fun. Well, on this particular night, there's about 15, 20 people there. You got music playing, people partying. Clyde's out playing beer pong with his buddies, and one of his friends goes, hey, dude, look. What's that? And Clyde and the other party goers turn and they look and they see something moving in the river. The muddy river that would be hard to navigate during the day. It's 11:30 at night. They see something moving in there. And they quickly realize it's someone. Walking out of the river is a man. He appears to be in his 50s. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was me. I'm 48 now. In 2 years, I may be this man. They said a man was walking out of the river. He appeared to be in his 50s. He was about 5'5", has a stocky build. He goes, and it wasn't that he was fat. It wasn't that he was muscular either. He was just this thick, stocky guy walking through the river. And he walks onto the land, walks across the street, and walks up to this party that's being held. The party's happening everywhere, but the beer pong's going on outside. He walks up to them, and now that they have a better view of him because he's more in the light, they realize that this man is wearing nothing but a tight Speedo. So maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. He walks out of the muddy river, walks onto land, looks at the guys, looks at the game, all the plastic cups set out and the ping pongs, and they're ready to go. And he goes, what game is this? They're kind of like a beer pong. And he just stands there. And they kind of look at each other, and then they're like, okay. And they continue to play their game. The man in the Speedo just watches them play beer pong for about 5 minutes. And then without a word, he turns around and walks back into the river. Now, here's the thing. A while back on the podcast, maybe a couple 100 or 200 episodes ago, we covered a story about a meth addict, which is the best way to start any story, honestly. About a meth addict trying to goon on the beach. He's like watching pornography on his smartphone or something like that. He's gooning in public. And a woman covered in scabs walks out of the river and starts pestering him, asking if she can borrow his sleeping bag. I'm actually surprised I remember that much of the story, considering we put out 2 stories a day. That one has stuck with me. And he just wanted to goon in peace. So he's trying to shake her off. And she's talking about going to Home Depot and shoplifting and all this stuff. And then finally he gets up and he leaves. The truest of all goons. This guy is the ascended one of Goonopolis, because he has a live woman there, but he'd rather watch porn. That's when you know you are a gooner. And we talked about that story and we had a good laugh, because we basically were talking about a meth-addicted woman. That's, I'm assuming, where the scabs came from, picking on her skin, walking out of the river, and he says she just emerged from the water and starts pestering him. And we covered that story, and I go, oh, it's a meth addict. And I think at the ending or something, I kind of made a reference, what if it's a cryptid? What if it's something like that? Could be. We say on this show, 1 time is an odd event, twice is a coincidence, but 3 times is a phenomenon. This is now the second story where we have someone emerging from a river. Because they didn't see him before he was coming out of the darkness of the water. Did I not make that detail clear? He came out of the water. Jason, that makes a big difference. You made it sound like it was just some hobo crossing the stream. They didn't see him until they saw him walk out of the river. Like he emerged from it. Probably should have said that earlier. So now we have 2 stories about a human walking out of the river, engaging with humans, surface people. You're like, wait a second, Jason. Is this the cryptid you're talking about in the intro? Because I'm definitely not having sex with this guy. Well, hold on. Here's my thing. The first time we covered this story, we just thought it was a funny story about a gooner trying to get away from a meth-addicted woman. And the gooner was addicted to meth as well. Maybe I didn't make that point clear either, but here's my thing. We covered that and we thought it was a funny story. Now we have two different stories about a human emerging from the water, interacting with surface people, and then this time he walks back into the river. The last time I think he just shook her off. I think he just kind of said, I'm going to go camp over there, and he went and gooned somewhere else. This is why I think it could be a cryptid, and I got a couple things to say about this. I'll try to keep it quick. Jason, you don't speed through these things. This is puzzling. Why do you think a man in a Speedo is a cryptid? Have you ever gone to a public pool? It's like, call up David Paulides. I've solved missing 411. This place is full of cryptids. Let me lay this out for you. This is my theory. There are so many stories around the world of human-like entities coming out of the water. Normally, they are some sort of siren, some sort of shapeshifter that is trying to drag humans back down to their watery realm. That is one of those legends that pretty much anywhere you go in the world where it has rivers and lakes, there will be legends about human-like entities in those rivers and lakes. Sometimes it's attributed to ghosts, sometimes it's attributed to mythological characters, and sometimes it's attributed to vengeful creatures that feast on humans. And we've always separated those two things. But what if what the woman of Scabs was, and what this man is a river dweller? They look human and they act human. Same way that you will hear stories about people walking along the river and being sucked in, or seeing a vision in there of a person crying out for help, and they go in and the person all of a sudden has a monstrous face and they barely get away. These stories are plentiful around the world. What if that's what these people are? The first story we just thought was a funny story. Now we have two of them. What if this isn't just a 5'5" stocky guy in a really tight Speedo? What if he is a river person? And if so, think about this. If you have a separate species that, let's say for a millennia or longer, they preyed on humans, but they are changing, they're evolving, and they're becoming more human and less animalistic. It's still not a human, but it's trying to be more human than its ancestors were. And this is the first stages of that. One story is just an odd story. Two stories is a coincidence. I wonder how many other stories we can find of people emerging from the water, having an odd interaction with a human nearby, and then walking back in. At a certain point, you do have to go, okay, this isn't just weirdos emerging from the river, which is already bizarre enough. There's something behind this. If you had a water cryptid who appears to be human and isn't feeding on humans the way it used to, if you want to think about it, if your food source was tricking people into the water and you were stationed in North America among a major waterway, people are going to fall in every once in a while, but it's going to be a lot harder to keep up that lifestyle. People have life jackets. People are in boats full of other people, and when a body goes overboard, there's a lot of people looking for that body. They have recovery teams that scour the river to find it. 100 years ago, you could feast to no end. People fall off boats, they don't know how to swim. Even if they do know how to swim, the river's too fast. They don't have life jackets. When a body went overboard, I mean, if you couldn't find it in the general vicinity, that was kind of it. But nowadays, you would have to adapt. If you were a cryptid, you would have to evolve. They had to figure out another way to put food on the table. I wonder if there is, if not now, soon, going to be more cryptids evolving. Not necessarily like evolving the way a frog evolves, but adapting. That's a better term. Adapting to a new environment. We did an episode a long time ago, and I haven't been able to find it. It's one of the episodes that I talk about every so often. I can't find it. About how cryptids, the perfect hunting ground would be the cities. Would be feeding on the homeless. As the suburbs sprawl out and destroyed their original hunting grounds, if you had something like a beast that fed on human flesh because loggers were out too late, or someone was drunk and they left town, and back then towns were separated by 20 miles of forest, you and your kin could eat until you couldn't eat no more. But as the suburbs sprawled into those woods and cities became interconnected, your hunting ground disappears. And so you either die out. See, cryptids always implies a physical component to it. Lilornia, or however you say her name, she also is a water-based, but she's more of a spirit. So she doesn't have to eat. She kills just for fun. The ditch witch is what I prefer to call her. Cryptid implies a biological component. If you have cryptids that were human in appearance most of the time, and their food source is dwindling, would they transition to be on land? And because they're a biological entity, a Bigfoot has a diet of like roots and berries and things like that. But you could feed him apples. You could feed him pears, because it's a biological creature. You could take a Sasquatch and lock him up. It'd be horrible. Don't do that. I mean, it'd be kind of cool, but you'd have to let him go at some point. And you could keep him alive by feeding him food. A spirit, you wouldn't even have to worry about any of those things. You wouldn't have to feed him. You wouldn't have to keep him comfortable in the right climate or anything like that. If cryptids look that human, some of them, I'm not saying Chupacabra in a top hat would pass, but at a certain point, this is what I'm really getting at. Have they begun, or have they already started interbreeding with humans? Would you have human cryptid children? Would you have in the gene pool somewhere, assuming it was compatible, genetically compatible, you could have somewhere in your family tree, your uncle banged a water monster, but didn't know it was a water monster. Just thought it was a woman covered in scabs. You're like, my dad does like pornography. It does make sense. He's always gooning at the family reunions. Your uncle bred with one of these human-appearing creatures, and his children were half human, half cryptid. But they wouldn't know. Assuming that it's completely compatible and the child is born, it would appear to be a normal human kid. You're like, Jason, there's a lot of problems wrong with this one. I think I would realize if my cousins had gills, every so often when they're in the pool, they start devouring their friends over at the backyard barbecue. Yeah, I mean, there could be there could logically be some things wrong with it. But think about how many stories we have of otherworldly entities interbreeding with humans. Aliens do it too. And in fact, some stories, that's the whole idea. Always this idea of the cryptids that don't immediately kill humans. There's always some sort of bizarre need for a family member, a need for another member of the unit. We covered that story a long time ago about that guy who says he was kidnapped by a Bigfoot family, and the female Bigfoot was trying to have sex with him. And he got away in time. That's what he says. I think he sat around and banged Mama Bigfoot for a while. And then goes, okay, I think it's time to make my escape. Is it possible? I mean, here's the thing. I'm not saying on a mass scale. I'm not saying everyone that lives by a river has a little bit of monster in them. But I wonder if throughout the scope of human history and going forward, if there are these water-based cryptids that look human, which is a story that goes around the world. I'm not just finding a story about a muddy man in a Speedo and trying to build a conspiracy theory out of it. These stories are all over the world. What happens if they have adapted and they're coming on land, but they're biological, so they still need to eat, and they still have a drive to procreate? Is there at least 1 or 10 or 50 people out there whose parents banged a cryptid and they didn't know it, and they have a little bit of monster in them? And it may not show up at all because a lot of those behaviors have already been lost by the parent species as well. They stopped feeding on human flesh. They needed to find new places to hunt, and they go, well, I can just go to a grocery store up here. We covered that story a long time ago about that town in Russia that kidnapped Bigfoot. And they caught her, and they held her prisoner, and the chieftain of the tribe in Russia ended up having sex with Bigfoot and having children. And eventually the Bigfoot woman died. That's a 100% true story. I don't know if I want to spoil it for you. There's news articles on it. There was genetic tests. I don't want to spoil it for you. I'll put it in the show notes because it's a fascinating episode in and of itself. But Jason, I listened to that episode. You're kind of misrepresenting it. Well, here's the thing. As far as they knew, it was a Bigfoot. But it is a true story. I'll put it in the show notes. You're all scratching your head. What could you have possibly done? SK, let's go ahead. You see, listen to an old episode. SK, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. We're saying goodbye to this backyard party. The bachelor days of old. Why don't you fly us all the way out to Sweden? But before we get started with that story, I want to do a really quick Dead Rabbit Radio recommends. Longtime listeners of the show know that I watch a ton of movies. I'm always watching a lot of low-budget horror movies, and I'm always on the lookout for just the weirdest film. I found what might be the most oddball film I've seen in a long time, and I knew I was in for a treat just from the title. It's a movie about this guy. You know the title's got to be something if I don't introduce it in the beginning. You have to set up the title. The title makes no sense. It's not even a real thing. The story's about this kid who everyone picks on. They call him Trash Boy. And we see at one point the bullies at school throwing him in a trash can. And they're all in high school. And I go, oh, okay, they call him Trash Boy because he probably gets thrown in the trash a lot. No. That's not why they call him Trash Boy. They call him Trash Boy because he eats garbage. He eats garbage all the time. He suffers from this mental disease where he's always eating garbage. Okay? So his mom, she's taken him to all sorts of psychiatrists and psychologists and tried all this stuff. She doesn't know what to do for her son. Trash Boy. It's so funny because I was like, oh, that's why they call him Trash Boy? I would call him Trash Boy. He eats trash. What else do you call him? She takes him to a faith healer. And she goes, can you heal my son of his addiction of eating garbage? And the faith healer goes, yeah, sure. But the faith healer dies during the process. So instead, Trash Boy now has the power. This makes no sense. This movie makes no sense. Trash Boy gains the power that if someone hurts him, because he's always getting picked on by these bullies, the bully gets hurt instead. So if you punched him as hard as you can in the face, your nose would get broken. And the movie is called The Unhealer. The Unhealer. Because he's not healing people. Like, that's not even a word. That's not anything. I saw the title, I was like, what's the Unhealer? Isn't that you just call him the harmer? The Unhealer. If you beat him up, you get hurt. And the movie is so weird. Is it a comedy? No, it's super dark and kind of gory. And then he realizes, wait a second, if you punch me, you get hurt. So he keeps setting up situations where people beat him up. But after a while, people stop beating him up because they realize there's something wrong with him. You get hurt when you punch him. So then, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how he figured this out, but he decided that the power also works this way. If he eats your clothing and then hurts himself, you get hurt. It's a totally different power. None of it makes sense. It was so funny. Like, at one point, he eats a guy's t-shirt, or he just eats a little bit of it. And then he wraps the t-shirt around his neck and starts choking himself, and the guy was swimming, and the guy can't breathe, and he drowns. And I was like, well, okay. I guess at this point, it's like 40 minutes in the movie. I'm kind of just along for the ride. He also decides that he can get extra power if he goes to the grave of the faith healer and eats the dirt at his grave. And at this point, I'm thinking, I'm starting to think this is a fetish film. It's on Amazon. I didn't find it on the dark web. I go, what? Now he's just eating. He doesn't have to eat stuff. He has these powers. And finally, towards the end, this is when I go, oh no, this is definitely, I'm not spoiling it, because trust me, I wouldn't be able to. It's so bizarre. But this is when I decided, I just watched a fetish film. Because everyone's staying away from this kid at this point, because everyone who comes near him gets killed, and they kind of realize he has these powers, so he can't even get close enough to people to eat their clothing. So at one point, the main football player bad guy is practicing, and Trash Boy breaks into the football player's car And, oh man, there's nothing of his to eat. There's no clothing of his to eat. Except there's a dirty gym bag. And inside of the gym bag is a pair of socks. They show Trash Boy smell the socks. He goes, "Pew-wee, no way." And the other thing in the bag was the bully's jockstrap. And I'm like, okay, which is he going to eat? I was on the edge of my seat. I go, you have a choice. Smelly socks. Well, the choice is just not to do it. He could have just went home, found another time to attack the guy. He has a choice. He can eat smelly socks. Jason, are you sure this is a real movie? Are you sure this isn't your fetish? It's not. Trash Boy has a big decision to make. He can eat a pair of sweaty socks, or he can eat a jockstrap. It doesn't smell. To be fair, it doesn't smell. But what would you choose? I mean, he eats trash. He's obviously not super picky about smell or taste. But he's like, pew-wee. And they show him holding up the jockstrap, and he's like shaking his head. And then the next scene, they show him on the football field confronting the bully, and he's finishing off the jockstrap. He's all... He like sucks it up like it's spaghetti noodle, and I was like, what is this movie? I mean, listen, at least the director had the dignity to not make us watch a teenage boy eat another teenage boy's jockstrap. But he did, in fact, eat the jockstrap, and then he's able to confront the bullies. Right? I mean, at a certain point, revenge, you're like, I don't know. I don't know if revenge is really worth it. I really want to get back at these guys, but eating a jockstrap, I really think it was a fetish film. I mean, the director's like, no, it wasn't. That wasn't. I'm going to eat your jockstrap right now, and I'm going to get back at you. I was like, what? So bizarre. That'll be a movie that 20 years from now I'll remember. Right? It won't even be a movie where I'll go, what was the name of that movie? The Unhealer. It's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre title, such a bizarre movie. For those reasons, Dead Rabbit Radio recommends. You're like, Jason, maybe don't recommend a movie. We look for these Dead Rabbit Radio recommends for great films. I guarantee if you watch The Unhealer, you've never seen anything like it. It's absolutely bizarre. It's so weird. And I'm leaving out a bunch of stuff, too. There's a bunch of twists and turns. Yeah, well, what are the twists and turns? Does he have to choose between eating a bra or eating a pair of panties? Well, that would have been preferable to eating a jockstrap, personally. But no, there's all sorts of twists and turns. You'll never know what's going to happen next, even though I did explain 3 big parts of it. Dead Rabbit Radio, if you're looking for a wacky, weird film to show people, if you're looking to get ostracized from your friends group or kicked out of your house, Dead Rabbit Radio recommends The Unhealer. We're headed all the way out to Sweden. We're actually going to be in rural Sweden. The Swedish countryside. We're about to meet a young woman. We don't have her real name. We'll call her Gretchen. She goes, I grew up in Sweden in the countryside, and I spent a lot of time outdoors. She goes, you just walk around in the forest. Just enjoy nature. Go out on these nature walks. And she goes, I did this all the time growing up. She's out walking through the woods, and she walks farther than she's ever walked before. But what's the big deal, right? You're just having fun. She finds herself, like, she's, at this point, about a couple kilometers from her house. Just enjoying the walk, seeing new things, right? Exploring parts of the forest that she hadn't been privy to. And that's when she sees this really tall bracken fern. I had to look that up. It's just a giant fern. She sees this giant fern, and she hadn't seen this before. Makes sense, though. She's never been in this part of the woods. She walks over to the giant fern, and she moves the leaves out of the way. And that's when she sees a small, perfectly round, that's how she describes it, a small, perfectly round tarn. That's a small mountain lake. Never didn't even know this was anywhere near my house. Sure, I've never been out this far, but it's beautiful. She walks up to the edge of it. The tarn is black as night, and it's perfectly still. She said it was so calm, it worked as a perfect mirror. She can see the reflection of the trees all around her. She can see the reflection of the sky above. She can actually see the clouds reflecting on the water. It's just absolutely magnificent. And she starts to walk closer to the edge because she's thinking, I wonder if there's any fish in there. I wonder if there's any frogs in there. I wonder if there's anything in this little body of water. So she gets close and she gets down on her hands and her knees and she leans over and she's looking now directly into the pitch black water. But she doesn't see anything in there. There's no movement at all. In fact, she can't even see the bottom. It's just this black water. She's close to it now. She's looking directly into it. At this point, she starts to become overcome with a intense feeling that something is deeply wrong. She doesn't know why, though. And she continues kneeling there, looking down at the still water of the Tarn. She sees the reflection of the trees surrounding her. She sees the reflection of the sky above her. And that's when she realized, looking directly into this water, she doesn't see her own reflection. She knows she needs to leave. She knows she needs to get out of there. And she starts to stand up. The next thing she knows, she's walking right towards her house. She's almost there. She goes, I don't know how it happened. I covered the distance of a few kilometers as far as my mind is concerned in an instant. But it took me a couple hours of walking to even get out there. Just wandering around. A couple hours wandering through the woods when she found this place, and then bam! She's near her home with no memory of the journey back. She said over the years after that, she would go out and try to find this area again. And she never could. It's a fascinating story. There's 100 different angles you could take on it. I think the one that I would take on it would be a pocket universe, a portal to another world. We've covered a lot of stories like this. They all kind of have the same setup and ending. What happens in between is unique, and that's what always makes these stories interesting. We covered that story about the guy who, there was like a cupboard door just sitting on the ground, and they lifted it up, and then these weird things happened, and they were never able to find the cabinet door again. We have stories of people going into abandoned homes and finding doors appearing and then disappearing. All of these stories, and they always involve people going to a location that they know, but they find something new. And then they can never find it again. It's a very interesting setup and ending. That story about those guys, they went into the woods, they spent years playing in the backwoods of their house. They found a kitchen with cabinets and an old fridge and a kitchen table set up, and there was like salt and pepper shakers and everything. It was just sitting in the middle of the woods, and when they went home to get their parents to show them, and then they came back, they could never find it again. An entire kitchen appeared and disappeared in the matter of like 20 minutes. And it does make you think about these portals into other worlds. But when I read this one, I am older at this point. I'm 48 years old. I'm going to be 49 in a couple months. And I wonder how eager I would be to journey into an other unknown world now. When I was in my 20s, if I moved away a giant leaf and found a mystical pool, and it's possible that it would be a portal to another world, I would not have hesitated to cross that line. But now I wouldn't. And I don't know if that is because as I get older, I realize that I have an importance to my family and my friends that maybe I didn't really know before. Maybe it was the sense of invincibility and immortality that youth brings versus being older. I don't know. And I wonder if it's a me thing, because I know a lot of paranormal researchers and ghost hunters that are my age, and they're far less scaredy cats than I am. But I also wonder, because this would be something separate, right? Pete Orbea, who is a paranormal researcher, he runs the Port Gamble Ghost Conference. He can walk into a haunted house. He gives ghost tours all the time. He goes into haunted houses. The ghosts will say his name because they know him. That creeps me out. It's really spooky, right? It's really spooky to me. So there could be a difference there. And I wonder what you guys think. I always like hearing from you guys when I ask these questions in episodes, and we usually get pretty good turnout, emails and YouTube comments and stuff. Would you take that step? Would you go into that portal? Recently we talked about, would you help out a paranormal entity in need, and there's a chance you may not be able to get back to Earth? That's not even what I'm talking about here. This is something different. As an explorer, would you step through that portal? Or in this case, would you stay? She had that sense of wrongness. And that's another thing. We've covered a ton of stories about people walking through the woods. They come across the house that they've never seen before. And they're instilled with a sense that they're not supposed to be there. Something's wrong and they leave. I'm assuming that's some sort of human warning system. I don't know if the paranormal presence or whatever supernatural force this is doesn't want you there. It actually wants you to leave. Is it a paranormal force saying you're not supposed to be here? It's actually a presence. It may see you as a sliver under the skin. And it's trying to push you out. Or is it our own body reacting to it? Our own human mind saying this is a inhuman place. This is not a welcoming portal. You don't look and you see on the other side a bunch of happy little elves doing a little dance. And some of the elves are full-grown women and they're quite beautiful. And you jump over there, and then you do become a slave of the elves, sure. But you have a beautiful elf wife or husband, as the case may be. No. Truly unknown portal. And you have a feeling to leave. You get a sense that something is wrong here. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you're walking down the street and you get a feeling that the person behind you has bad intentions, you should not go, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'm going to keep walking down the street. I'm going to ignore that feeling in my gut. No, you should cross the street. Or you should pull out your phone and pretend to get a phone call. Or you should see if there's anyone else that you don't have that feeling towards and see if you can interact with them. But in a situation like this, you may be the only human who will venture there. This may be a 1 in a million, because we have these stories, but we don't know if all of these places lead to the same phenomenon, because there are so many differences. Do you reach into the water? Do you stay there and see where this universe shifts to? You can assume that because, she moves away the bracken fern. Once she steps through, this is the new reality. So it has oxygen you can breathe. It has water. There's nothing living in it. But let's assume that it's not the environment that'll kill you. And you know what? Maybe nothing will kill you. Maybe you wait there too long, and when you push the bracken leaf away and you go to walk back home, you're in a totally new forest. And you could walk and walk and walk. You'll never find your home. You're in a different realm. One much like our own planet. But it's not necessarily filled with monsters that at nighttime they're going to come out like the monsters from From, which is a great show. I really recommend that as well. Probably should have done that as a Dead Rabbit Radio recommends. Do you do that? I don't know if I'm getting old. Well, I am getting old, but I don't know if in my old age I'm becoming more of a scaredy cat. I don't know if it's because I know people will miss me, which I knew people would miss me when I was younger, but I guess I didn't really think too much about it. Because here's the thing, like I talk about in a recent Dead Rabbit Radio Classics episode, I already recorded it, it'll come out next week, but my life growing up in Sacramento especially was quite perilous and pretty violent. So there was always a chance that I might not make it through the week. The idea of stepping into another portal when I was 25, it really was no different because anything could happen to me down there. I was constantly getting in trouble. Starting trouble. Probably a better way to put it. But my point is that I was doing irresponsible things that my family members would have missed me and suffered. and, been upset if I had died here, there, or this point or that point or whatever. Since my life was so chaotic physically already, the idea of stepping into a portal and facing some sort of supernatural danger or spiritual exile, it didn't really occur to me. I honestly would have walked through a portal or stayed near the Tarn when I was younger. I would not do that today. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if it's because I'm old and I'm cautious now. I say as I'm playing with the folding knife. You hear that? As I'm sitting there recording this podcast and I'm playing with the ultra sharp folding knife. I don't know. And I mean, I'd have to say it's a bad thing in my line of work. Like, I need to be ready to go into a haunted house. I need to be ready to go where no one has gone before. I mean, but here's the thing. I would want to come back. It's just interesting. When I read this story, I thought, and I do with so many of these stories, what would I do in this situation? And this is one, portals also scare me. Like, we've talked about that before on the show. Now, if I was recording this podcast, I actually had a podcast called Dead Rabbit Radio back in 2003. Wish I'd stuck with it, because we would have been on, year 20, 22 years at this point. If I was doing this podcast back then, I'd be talking about how cool portals were and how much I wanted to walk through one and da-da-da-da-da. As I'm older, I don't know if it's wiser. It's definitely more cautious, and you might use the word cowardly. But I'm really curious as to what you guys have to say. Not about me. I don't want an email saying, "We miss you so much, Jason. We love you so much. You're so handsome." No, I'm just joking. I don't get those emails, but I don't need those emails. I don't need emails talking about how much you'd miss me. What I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from you guys. Would you guys walk through the portal? And is there a difference between now, because I know a lot of my audience is my age, versus being younger, and I have a lot of younger people listening to the audience. I'd love to hear from you guys as well, because I think there would be a big difference. But as explorers of the paranormal, we're supposed to take that step. Or in this case, just stay. I mean, imagine if someone called themselves a mountain explorer. Is that a thing? You're like, Jason, they're called mountain climbers. They just climb mountains. Imagine if someone said that they were a map maker, but they never left their house. They have a drone. I mean, I guess there's a lot of ways around it. You know what I mean, though? Like Lewis and Clark, I look at it that way. They didn't know. They actually thought they were going to run into dinosaurs. They thought they were going to run into giant monsters on their journey over. I wish that they had. History class would have been way cooler. But they did it. Magellan did it. How many other explorers all around the world throughout human history said, "I'm going there"? And you could go, well, Jason, they were going on Earth. They were walking around on the dirt. But they didn't know what threats. For all they knew, there were fearsome beasts and angry gods and savage tribes and all. They didn't know. But they put their lives on the line for the sake of discovery. And money, right? Maybe if I got paid as much as Magellan got paid, I get a bunch of giant golden doubloons dropped off at my house, I'll go to any portal you want me to. Fascinating, though. It really did. When I read the story, I thought it really made me think the differences then and now. And also, I want to say, I don't want to make the show all about me. I think it's really interesting that we have this idea of her losing her memories from the Tarn back to her house. That makes me think that it was either a supernatural force saying you need to leave, and it kind of wiped her memory, or it was her brain just shutting down and almost like this zombie-like march back to her house. And it also sounds alien. And stories like this is why you have people who connect the stories of the Fae folk, which I'm not a huge fan of. I think they're super boring. But a lot of people like them. The stories of the Fae folk with the stories of UFOs and alien abductions. It's because stories like this, it really does kind of sit in the middle there. This idea of this secret clearing, this idea of this perfectly round location. Sometimes it's a perfectly round clearing or a perfectly round circle of rocks. This one is a perfectly round tarn. I wish I knew how big it was. A tarn means small mountain lake. Was it something that she could have easily walked around? Or was it this massive place? Fascinating story, though. It does make you go, this part sounds alien, but this part sounds fairy. Fae folkish. And that's a fascinating thing. But also just the idea, would you walk or would you stay if you got this feeling? Could you fight against it just to see, just to discover for yourself what is on the other side? Is the knowledge of that knowledge you may never be able to share with another person worth it? Young and old, I think that'll make a big difference in the answers we get. And who knows, maybe as I get older, I'll care less. Maybe when I'm 70, I was like, give me a portal. I'll jump through any portal. I don't know. Fascinating stuff. Getting older is fascinating as well, because your views change and you look back and go, wow, different viewpoint. Most people just look back and go, man, my politics have changed. I look back and go, oh man, I'm so much more of a scaredy cat than I used to be. Ghosts scare me more now than they did when I was 20. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the